The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries is an intergovernmental organization or cartel of 13 countries, founded on 14 September 1960 in Baghdad by the first 5 members. It has since 1965 been headquartered in Vienna, Austria, although Austria is not an OPEC member state. As of September 2018, the 13 member countries accounted for an estimated 44% of global oil production and 81.5% of the world's proven oil reserves, giving OPEC a major influence on global oil prices that were previously determined by the so-called Seven Sisters grouping of multinational oil companies. The stated mission of the organization is to coordinate and unify the petroleum policies of its member countries and ensure the stabilization of oil markets, in order to secure an efficient, economic and regular supply of petroleum to consumers, a steady income to producers, and a fair return on capital for those investing in the petroleum industry. Economists often cite OPEC as a textbook example of a cartel that cooperates to reduce market competition, but one whose consultations are protected by the doctrine of state immunity under international law. The organization is also a significant provider of information about the international oil market. The formation of OPEC marked a turning point toward national sovereignty over natural resources, and OPEC decisions have come to play a prominent role in the global oil market and international relations. The effect can be particularly strong when wars or civil disorders lead to extended interruptions in supply. In the 1970s, restrictions in oil production led to a dramatic rise in oil prices and in the revenue and wealth of OPEC, with long-lasting and far-reaching consequences for the global economy. In the 1980s, OPEC began setting production targets for its member nations. Generally, when the targets are reduced, oil prices increase. This has occurred most recently from the organization's 2008 and 2016 decisions to trim oversupply. The current OPEC members are the following: Algeria, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, the Republic of the Congo, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Venezuela. Former OPEC members are Ecuador, Indonesia and Qatar. A larger group called OPEC Plus was formed in late 2016 to have more control on the global crude oil market. In 1949, Venezuela and Iran took the earliest steps in the direction of OPEC by inviting Iraq, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia to improve communication among petroleum exporting nations as the world recovered from World War II. At the time, some of the world's largest oil fields were just entering production in the Middle East. The United States had established the Interstate Oil Compact Commission to join the Texas Railroad Commission in limiting overproduction. The U.S. was simultaneously the world's largest producer and consumer of oil, and the world market was dominated by a group of multinational companies known as the Seven Sisters, 5 of which were headquartered in the U.S. following the breakup of John D. Rockefeller's original Standard Oil monopoly. Oil exporting countries were eventually motivated to form OPEC as a counterweight to this concentration of political and economic power. In February 1959, as new supplies were becoming available, the multinational oil companies unilaterally reduced their posted prices for Venezuelan and Middle Eastern crude oil by 10%. Weeks later, the Arab League's first Arab Petroleum Congress convened in Cairo, Egypt, where the influential journalist Wanda Yablonsky introduced Saudi Arabia's Abdullah Tariki to Venezuela's observer Juan Pablo Perez Alfonso, representing the two then largest oil-producing nations outside the United States and the Soviet Union. Both oil ministers were angered by the price cuts, and the two led their fellow delegates to establish the Mahdi Pact or Gentleman's Agreement, calling for an oil consultation commission of exporting countries, to which MOCs should present price change plans. Yablonsky reported a marked hostility toward the West and a growing outcry against absentee landlordism of the MOCs, which at the time controlled all oil operations within the exporting countries and wielded enormous political influence. In August 1960, ignoring the warnings and with the US favoring Canadian and Mexican oil for strategic reasons. The MOCs again unilaterally announced significant cuts in their posted prices for Middle Eastern crude oil. The following month, during the 10th to the 14th of September 1960, the Baghdad Conference was held at the initiative of Tariqi Perez Alfonso and Iraqi Prime Minister Abd al-Karim Qasim, whose country had skipped the 1959 Congress. Government representatives from Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia and Venezuela met in Baghdad to discuss ways to increase the price of crude oil produced by their countries, and ways to respond to unilateral actions by the MOCs. Despite strong U.S. opposition,